for agreeing to speak. First of all, this mandate, the mandate for the Special Rapporteur's mandate for assembly, peaceful assembly and association. What does it actually mean?
The Special Rapporteur system is a system of independent experts who basically promote and protect the area of specificity that you've got. And in my case, my area is freedom of peaceful assembly and the right of association. It's a new mandate. It was created in 2010, and I began in 2011. So it really was created as in recognition of the importance that these rights have, but also the fact that they were getting curtailed by states. And you know the way the UN human rights system works is that it's made up of states, yes, but then states also accept that sometimes it's difficult for the state itself to on its own implement some of the rights. So then they created this special rapporteurs to help them, to encourage them, to nudge them, to pressure them. So this is what I do.
Does it work? Do the states listen?
Sometimes they do. I mean, I don't think there's any one standard, and I think you get different and varying experiences. I think what comes up is that states are often embarrassed to be told they're doing wrong, and especially to be told by somebody coming in with a UN flag who says, actually, on this issue you have failed, on this issue you have failed. But we don't do this to show them up. We're not trying to shame them. You know, the idea is to actually get them to improve, and so we like to say it's constructive criticism, because if you're always being told nice things about yourself, you never improve. And the idea is that actually there's no country in the world, from north to south, east to west, that's perfect. Human rights is an ongoing project, and it is a work in progress, and every single country has problems. So our job then is to encourage states. Sometimes we use some very tough language, but our job is to encourage states to get to a point where they're implementing and respecting human rights.
One of the problems that we see is that the lack of reflection of this kind of work by the UN to the media, which was there earlier. Today you see a shrinking space within the media as well. So does it make carrying your message that much more difficult?
Absolutely, I think it's not just in some countries. Actually, I think there's what you have seen in the last maybe 10, 15 years across the world is the dumbing down, if you wish, of the media. That now many people in the media think of the glamorous stories, the celebrity stories, the sense of dumbing down. I'm not sure why that's there, and so you've got very few media outlets that are keeping true and are keeping consistent and are keeping to one of the ideals of journalism, which is informing, educating, and empowering. And you can do that within and entertaining as them as well, but you can do that within a framework that's interesting, that's helping people to stand up for their rights, because ultimately human rights are protected by people, by the people themselves, sometimes as individuals, but more often in organizations, as groups, because then you have this strength in unity.
The United Nations itself comes with a baggage. You said in your concluding remarks that out of the entire budget of the UN, only 6% is spent on human rights work, plus the imbalances that come from its priorities, etc. How much does that baggage impede your appeal to people and people's approach to you?
Well, you know, the UN is yes, the UN comes with a lot of issues, there's no doubt, but there's no alternative to the United Nations. Sadly, or either sadly or fortunately, whichever way you want to see it, there's no other game in town but the United Nations. So yes, in certain cases it comes with some obstacles, but I think that ultimately there is a genuineness, because when people like myself, who are special rapporteurs, speak, when we write, when we document, when we do our reports, they are not simple reports. They're very thoroughly done. They're very thoroughly researched. They're very thoroughly verified. So it really is the credibility of the integrity of the work that speaks for us. So when we talk with governments, when I talk with governments, I ask a question and I hear the response. Sometimes the response is useful. Sometimes they're playing with me. But that's the nature of life. But ultimately, we take personal responsibility. I take personal responsibility for the work I put out. And I can tell you that it is so clear to me that whether the UN is there or not, the integrity of my work has to be beyond reproach, has to be thoroughly checked and verified, and I am confident that what I'm saying is the right thing.
Free assembly and association. It ought to be that democracies are better than other formations, other kinds of governments. Are they?
we don't want to do a comparison. Let me phrase that in this way. That for me, the centerpiece of understanding and appreciating that a country is democratic is not that it has regular elections. That's one aspect, but really whether it allows, it facilitates, not just allows, it actually facilitates peaceful assembly, and then also allows the people to organize themselves in associations without hindrance. Now, the key part here is peaceful. Associations that are forming, whether they are people's movements, social movements, women's organizations, are forming peacefully, but they're allowed to operate and have the space to operate, sometimes even to question. That is absolutely their right. And in terms of assembly, people have right to protest, and protest strongly, as long as it's peaceful. Yes, sometimes a protest will be raucous, will be noisy, will be, but as long as it's peaceful, it's okay. And if indeed there is violence from that protest, the duty of the state is to go in, find the person who's causing the violence, take them out, and let it go on. Because it is how the only way a state, the only way government officials can ever understand what people are truly feeling is if this right is expressed, and if this right is given space to operate. So I like to say that a democracy is not about elections. In fact, you judge a democracy by what happens between elections. Is the government, is the state, is the regime in power facilitating and allowing people to express themselves? Of course you know this, but if a state is responsive, people won't protest. That's the natural nature of things. If a state is responsive, people don't protest. If you're able to talk to state officials and say, this project isn't helping us, let's have a meeting and discuss it, and you can see there's actual agreement, you won't protest. People don't protest for the sake of protesting. It's a very powerful and difficult thing to do. So when they say, look, we're going to protest for 5 hours, means we won't eat for 5 hours, we won't work for 5 hours, we won't run businesses for 5 hours, we won't go to school for 5 hours. That's a sacrifice. And they're doing it because they feel the need to. That we have to give respect to.
So, you've heard us for 2 days. You were supposed to be in India. You couldn't come there. So that's one part of my question. The second thing is, we have in India protests carrying on for 1,000 days, you heard. We have villages protesting. We have entire districts where people are being picked up and false cases being put on them because they are simply protesting to protect their livelihoods. And this is not getting projected as it should be, again, because of what the media has become. How does India deal with this? I mean, how do India, society deal with it, state deal with it? And how long can you carry on by this prevention, active prevention of protest?
Well, I think for me it was really an eye-opener to listen and to hear and understand a little better about India. I have, by no means can I say that I know India or understand it. I think it's a vast continent in its own, and it's very complex and very difficult. However, what I have heard from credible people and credible documentation suggests that that there is something to be looked at in India, and I will be sending a request to the government of India formally and officially to ask them to invite me to do an official mission to India, because I think it's important that we have that dialogue. It's important that I spend time not just with the group that was here, but also others who are not here, grassroots movements, social people at the lowest level, people who say they're victims, who've been arrested in cases. I want to meet with them. But more importantly, official missions are useful because I get to listen to the state, to government officials. They have a chance to tell me. I have a chance to put things forward to them. They can say, yes, it's happening, no, it's not happening. That voice is what I need to hear, because so I can make a rational judgment about it, and a rational, recommendation be based upon hearing as many sides as possible. So once the letter goes, hopefully in the next week, I'm hoping that the government of India will accept that chance and invite me. I won't like to have constructive dialogue with them. Now, India, of course, presents itself as the world's largest democracy, but with all the problems there, it clearly means that this democracy needs to be tweaked, needs to be channeled and moved a bit, and I think that's okay, because there's no perfect democracy, but I think India would be wonderful if this world's largest democracy was also the world's largest respecter of human rights in every facet. That the complaints you hear are not as as vehement and as strong. And people are protesting for 1,000 days. That and you can't just say they just because they like protesting. It just can't be. People just don't do that. But I would like to meet that group that's there for 1,000 days. I'd like to understand why they're doing it, what they're doing, how the government is dealing with those are important things, because it just means that there needs to be systems and structures and spaces, in fact, where people can have this dialogue and work together as members of, as part and parcel of Indian society. Now, on the visa, I would have loved to go to India to meet at least for a couple of days. I appreciate it's not enough. It's barely enough to be able to start understanding. But it was sad that there was no guarantee that on the Friday before this meeting that I was going to get a visa, and so we had to make alternatives, because it just doesn't make sense to put your passport in and then you can't travel because it's in there for 5 days. So we made it I think we made the right decision. But it'd be useful as well if the government of India, because there was letters to the government, I sent all my papers for get a visa. I would have appreciated a more favorable response than I got in this case. Yeah.
Unfortunately, one of the leaders of this movement that has been protesting for 1,000 days couldn't make it.
Correct.
And was stopped from coming. So your journey as an activist and now a special rapporteur, would you like to say a few personal words about that?
Well, I'm still an activist. I haven't stopped. I think for me it's very clear that what I bring to the mandate is my own experiences and my own very strong commitment to human rights generally, but also the concept of association, organizing, and to assembly. That ultimately I actually feel very strongly again that for societies, for any country, facilitating and allowing people to express themselves, whether it is in the media, whether it's online, or whether it's on the streets, or wherever it is, allowing that is such an important safety valve for society. And when people feel they can do that, then the other more extreme ways in which they can express themselves, which you don't want, are then left out, and they're not part of the equation at all. People then apply peaceful means, because if you can show that peaceful means work, then people will keep doing them. But if it turns out the peaceful means don't work, then all bets are off. And it's such a sad state when it gets to that point in any country in the world, not just India, in any country of the world, when people feel, okay, we've tried everything we can to do it peacefully, we have talked, and somebody else then says, look, this is the only way. Then the country's in trouble, and you don't want to get there. The cost and the price and the consequence is too high. So it's simply easier particularly in a democracy, a country that has regular elections. It makes a lot of sense for governments to listen, because it makes them more popular as well. And even though in India now you've apparently got a government that's elected by 31% of the population, which perhaps says something that you people in India have to look at your electoral system. But nevertheless, I think for that regime it wants to get more votes, then surely it should be listening to people more and get popularity on that basis.
This regime, sir, has passed 240 projects in about 121 days and not looked at either livelihood issues or environmental clearances. And it is also promising to go back on labor protection laws, which have been won by the organized labor movement after 150 or 200 years of bitter struggle. So we are not looking at a very, very hopeful picture in terms of assembly and association either, apart from general human rights violations.
Well, I don't know. I'd have to be able to see the contracts and the projects have been signed off, because I don't know what's happened. And also it's important to talk to people on the ground about them and see what exactly is the right thing, as far as they're concerned. It's important to hear from the government as well, I know. But generally speaking, I think the question you're putting out is the role of business and the role of business and development, perhaps, vis-a-vis environment and other rights. And my view is that look, it's not an either-or situation. It need not be either-or. It's not about business, and if you want business, then you don't have trading. So not that if you want investment, you don't have environmental protection. At the end of the day, the most important and the most crucial guarantor of sustainable development that benefits people is if both happen together. It may take a little longer, yes, but better that extra 5-6 months than rush into something, then later you regret, say, oh my goodness, the air isn't good, the rivers aren't clean anymore. You never know where it goes, it hurts you. And it's always fascinating, because there's nothing new here. I mean, if you look at Europe in the Industrial Revolution, you look at Americas in that time, you look at China, you look at Japan, and even Russia during the all these moments of fast industrialization, you see the cost to the environment, to the labor movement, and you think, why do we have to repeat the same mistakes people made? We should be smarter now. We can do both things. We can preserve an environment and do development. We are smarter than we were before. For crying out loud, let's show the smartness we've got.
Thank you so much. It was wonderfully put. Thank you so much.